what I want to kind of start moving towards is DISC, because as HR becomes more strategic and it's not the old personnel department on one side, or it's not always, we're building this wonderful culture and it's, whatever all the cultural things are. There's real work that needs to get done. There's a business here. This isn't a club, right? This is a company that we're all at that needs to be profitable, or if it's a nonprofit organization, needs to be, making an impact in the ways that we've said are important to us. Not just that we all like each other. But what that becomes is that HR oftentimes is the glue that's kind of helping, at least it's the, tendons and ligaments that kind of keep things together between bone and muscle. And that requires the ability to speak to different parts of the organization in different ways, in different, stakeholders at the company in different ways, and to just really be a master communicator of strategy, policies, as you said earlier, reprimands. There's all kinds of things that HR is responsible for carrying the water on and needs to be able to effectively communicate. So with that, if that's a decent enough bridge, can you talk about just one sort of the basic tenets of DISC, but then also the importance of being able to communicate effectively with people who may not share your communication style?
That cognitive diversity is such a big piece of the puzzle. And I think companies can be quick to attempt to quantify diversity in other ways. We hear a lot about
graphically.
Yeah. And I mean, all important pieces of the puzzle. I think what gets kind of tossed to the back burner, if acknowledged at all, is this idea of cognitive diversity, how we're showing up to communicate and connect with one another, tackle challenges, etc. So that's one of I love how DISC kind of fits into this diversity, inclusion, belonging, accessibility, etc. conversation. And I'll be the first to say DISC is not the only language that is out there. Assessments in general are so widely used among organizations. Some other popular ones include Myers-Briggs, of course, and Clifton Strengths, which was StrengthsFinder. Helpful for enhancing self-awareness, building teams, leading people to meaningful work. Career coaches use this, use assessments fairly regularly for various reasons. DISC is not a one-size-fits-all, but I found that where it really excels is when people say, yes, I want to build a foundation of self-awareness to understand how I prefer to communicate with others and do my best work. In what environments am I going to do my best work? But then also help me step beyond that to strengthen relationships. Once I first understand me, I need to come to know you, Bob, and understand how I may need to adapt my leadership, sales, communication style, etc. along the way to connect more meaningfully and productively with you. It's one thing for me to show up. I know you appreciate and use the Clifton Strengths assessment yourself. It's one thing for me to show up self-aware in the Clifton Strengths that I bring to my work. I think that's a valuable piece of the puzzle. I also want to position DISC as an opportunity for people to say, how can I take what I understand about myself and what I've learned about you and have you leave a conversation with me feeling seen and heard? You want to be led by me or sold to by me or influenced in some way by me because you feel that I'm treating you with respect and acknowledging and celebrating, what you uniquely bring to our team or to our business, or fill in the blank. And I think DISC does that fairly well.
Yeah. So, and I agree. Do you mind just sort of sharing the basic fundamentals of DISC for people who are not familiar with it?
Of course. So there are 4 primary DISC styles, D, I, S, and C. We're a blend of all 4 styles, but we gravitate toward one or another. And it often depends on the relationship that we're in, the conversation that we're having, the environment that we're in. One of the things I love about DISC is it reminds us we do have some agency, even though we have some consistent personality traits, that conversation to conversation, we can choose behavior that's going to be beneficial to us. And I know with your sales background, et cetera, your business background, that that idea of being able to adapt to other communication styles is so valuable.
Yes.
Um, D is that dominant style, very direct and decisive, very time sensitive and competitive. Let's get right to business. Value producing, of course. The I or influencing style is very high energy, enthusiastic, energetic, great with the big picture and selling in the broadest sense of the term, influencing others to see their way of viewing the world. The S or steadiness style is still people focused, but it's more dialed back in terms of their energy. They first and foremost want to be of service to others, very cooperative and big on having all voices be heard and gaining consensus if possible. And the C or conscientiousness style is valuing accuracy above all else. Detail, having T's crossed and I's dotted, but being right and ensuring that what they submit or say is, of a fairly high standard.
Yes.
We're a mixture of all four, but we gravitate toward one or another style as it benefits us. And my job is to help teams and consultants learn how to do that more intentionally.
Yeah. So we talk about this not in the DISC framework per se, although maybe we should, is in interviewing, right? Because you said salespeople tend, to be very good at kind of reading the room basically, and like, who am I talking to, and how do I adapt on the fly? And that, I think that's very true. Unfortunately, most people aren't salespeople, and so when you're interviewing, you're selling yourself, and you can be at a distinct disadvantage of resonating with the other person, as you say, communicating the value that you bring, because you're not speaking their language in a way that they're most able to receive the value that they're looking for. And so, we talk about remixing, where basically the melody is the same. You're a music guy. The melody is the same, but we've remixed it to where if I'm talking to a D, I might be very focused on the outcomes, the results, the measurable things that we did, in a timely way, on budget, those kinds of things, like you get shite done kind of stuff. And if I was telling the same story to a C, it'd be right, very rigorous process, just very, very high, focus on quality, and accuracy, and that, the work was right. And we took a lot of pride in the work was right. That's what, but it's the same story. It's just being remixed to kind of dial the treble up or dial the bass up, depending on what's going to help that person understand the value that you bring. And the way that I say is the resume might get you the interview, the stories you tell, and I think I would say parenthetically, and how you tell them is what gets you the job. And how those stories are heard is what gets you the job. And I think that, what you're talking about is just so fundamental. And again, I do want to make sure that we keep this, also through the lens of HR, because HR can have such a profound impact on an organization when these key messages are communicated in a way that the audience can best receive them.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm so glad you've pointed out that application originally about the job seeker, because I think that that's one that gets often overlooked by people who are in search of meaningful work and in pursuit of meaningful work. They think of DISC or other assessments as a way to sort of bond with an existing team, an intact team. And I come along and say, well, what if, in interviewing for a job within an organization, you were to realize that person A that you're speaking with today has a certain way of seeing the world and a certain set of values and communication preferences. And then person B that you're going to speak with tomorrow has a completely different set of values. Yes, they both work for the same organization, but your ability to progress through the interview process may come down to your ability to adapt in the moment to the person sitting in front of you. And on the flip side, then maybe if that person sitting in front of you is in talent acquisition or in HR, imagine the value to that person who's working for the organization to be able to speak a language that the candidate feels comfortable with, that gets them to share valuable aspects of their story and the value they bring and the things that they've accomplished in previous jobs that they have. I mean, it's all about enhancing these relationships. And oftentimes the relationship is between a job seeker and an HR person.
Exactly. And so, we just fundamentally believe that at the end of the day, people hire people, and we hire people that we like and trust. And to the extent that there's less static on the line and more harmony on the line, that people can
Yeah.
actually, and I said that on purpose, but that they're speaking the same language. Their melody resonates with both of them in a meaningful way. That's when really great connections get made. And again, I don't want to skip past, the role that HR can play, and as an HR professional who might be listening to this, to be able to understand the value. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it, and how that can change appropriately depending on who it is that you're talking to.
I worked for a woman during my time with Levy Restaurants who was masterful at this, and it would be easy to say, well, that's that in the wrong hands, something like DISC or a similar assessment can become manipulative. And she demonstrated that it's not manipulative. It is simply being able to adapt to speak multiple languages. I would step into her office and she would connect with me in a particular way. She knew what I needed from her. She knew the sort of detail that I was going to need to accomplish what I needed to accomplish. And I would step out of her office and somebody else would step in, and she would take on a different communication style, but it was always in a very genuine, effective way, and I think that was sort of my introduction to the possibility that HR professionals of all sorts, but honestly, leaders across the organization, with a common language like DISC, can build a skill that allows them to connect and communicate with their stakeholders in ways that they never have before.
Yeah.
That the salesperson, or the talent acquisition professional, or the frontline manager can have greater influence than they ever realized they could have, simply by recognizing that remix that you're talking about can make or break a relationship.
I remember a number of years ago now, but I was working in a market research company. So a lot of C's at a company like that, where they're very, about the methodology and the accuracy of the methodology. And they're very analytical and rigorous in how they went through and thought about things. I'm an I all day with an appropriate dash of D. And, and so I was giving our sales strategy, because as you said earlier, I's like strategy and I love strategy. And so I was presenting our sales strategy for the year. And of course, I thought it was pretty amazing. And so I'm like at the end of it. And so, well, and that's it. And are there any questions or comments folks have?
Mm-hmm.
Crickets. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, what the heck?
Yeah.
And so, okay, so fast forward, meeting over, and one of the younger analysts who, I had a good relationship with, I'm like, Angie, what the heck? Like nothing? Like, really?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, Bob, you have to understand, like we just want to process. Like, it would almost be irresponsible to give you a visceral reaction without having given it sufficient soak time
I
and
love
really
that.
kind of process it. And this has been 20 years ago, and that has stuck with me, because I was a leader at a company who was communicating ineffectively to an audience that wasn't able to receive the message the way, or maybe it's more on me. Like, I wasn't able to get the feedback that I wanted because I didn't understand my audience.
Right.
And so that's just been a very lasting memory. Now, when I've got a framework like DISC to help me go, oh, kind of here's the dynamic. Now I can kind of anticipate it.
Mm-hmm.
Back to your point, though, on the HR person that was like, really masterful at this, and you said that people sometimes could perceive that as being manipulative. I'm like, oh my goodness. No, I think that's the definition of empathetic.
Yeah.
Like, she's trying to meet you where you are. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's compassionate, empathetic, authentic. I think those are really, really good things. It's not Machiavellian at all.
No. You always get some skeptical folks in the mix, and I've been that skeptical person on occasion, and I think that and I've had people come back, and that's the only reason I mention that. It's not because she was in particular perceived as manipulative, but I've had people following a workshop saying, in the wrong hands, couldn't this allow somebody to be manipulative? And of course, that's always the case, right? That if I'm If I'm being disingenuous with you or attempting to
Yes.
get something from you that is not in your best interest, then of course, then that's not ideal for anybody. But if I recognize that DISC as a common language can help me, just in the same way if you were to travel outside of the country, right? So you go outside of the country and you sit down at a table and you need water for the table at dinner. If you can ask for that water in the local language, two things are going to happen. Number one, you are going to potentially get that water more quickly than you would have otherwise. And two, what I would argue, most importantly, or more importantly, you're going to communicate respectfully with the
Yes.
people in that country. And I think DISC is similar in terms of language. If I understand your DISC language or preference, as we say, and I can speak to that in some sense, even if you don't realize that DISC is behind it, you might say, you know what, I really appreciate that Erich seemed to be able to speak my language, that he seemed to value what I value, and we were able to have a productive conversation as a result. DISC may never come up in your thought process,
Right.
but if you leave feeling seen, heard, celebrated, some of the things I mentioned previously, that's nothing but good.
Yeah. Not only nothing but good, it's also highly differentiated. It's
Sure.
highly differentiated. So again, for putting just in the context of HR, but I think this would apply to virtually any function, to the extent that you can create that differentiated brand for yourself, that people really seem to like Liz. Like, she gets on with everybody, and she's able to kind of rally the troops to get behind whatever it is we've asked her to go lead. Okay, well, if part of that is because she knows how to communicate effectively with people, and that's why they resonate with her,
Yeah.
then how's that not ever a good thing? But also, it's very good for Liz's career because she knows how to go do those sorts of things.